she's on her way. It is a happier story, but it also underscores that there are people out there who will not. When I came here, the name of the Interfaith organization, which had expelled my predecessor, is called the Christian Ministers Alliance. That's when I joined it. That was the name of the organization. We've since changed the name to the Greater Florence Ministries Alliance. And so, you know, everybody else in the organization, and there are a dozen religious organizations, they're all churches. They're really only just doing this for me. And they just elected me president. I drew the short straw. I can't decide whether I wanted the limousine or the Learjet. But you know, we just planned an interfaith service in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I said, well, you know, Dr. King was a Christian minister, and you guys are all Christians. And the real issue here is that 10 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated time in America. You're going to have this Martin Luther King service for the first time in a white church. This 2010, first time. And I said, you're going to have this in a white church. Really, you should have a Christian service. I mean, you know, you don't have to include me. And they wouldn't hear it. They wouldn't hear it. They insisted that I be part of it. And that it be inoffensive to Jewish sensibilities. So there is progress. But the progress means that you've started somewhere that's not so progressive and done something else. Yeah.
I'm just curious, as an open question to the residents, how, I guess, comfortable are you? I mean, as you explained, it's a very tolerant environment, but I was just curious as to the extent of your expression of a Jewish identity in regard to your neighbors, I guess. Is that, like, are they well aware that you are Jewish and you're comfortable having that kind of connection, or is it kind of just like you happen to be Jewish and your friends? I don't know why I'm struggling to ask this question.
I'm very comfortable with it. They know that I'm Jewish. When they get up, the minister does the blessing at the Kiwanis Club, and you know, that's fine. You know, and, he asked me to do it. And I do most of it. I do translate it. And you know, everybody in town. Part of it is living in town for many years. And my parents and grandparents being here, they knew we were Jewish. We're a little bit different, but we're still respected members of the community. And I think you really do find this in small towns. That, people blend in well, and they know that this family is different, and they may not know a lot of the particulars. I think we're more outgoing than we were 20, 30, 40 years ago about the particulars of the religion, the whites and differences. But, they understand that we don't believe the same things. And, I've given my share of talks to different Sunday school classes and sometimes in school. And, you just kind of spread it around that my take is that the Protestant Christians, which are basically what's here, 85 to 90% of the population, just don't really think of anybody else. They're used to worshiping in their own ways, a difference in religion, or Baptist, Presbyterian, Methodist, and so on. And they don't really think of really small minorities, Jews and Catholics scattered around, and Greek Orthodox. But I haven't seen a lot of animosity, except occasionally some in the, how do you say, fundamentalist Christian churches, I reckon. But the mainstream Methodist, Presbyterians, Episcopal, etc., are very accepting.
My son is a first grader at a public school, and his teachers have been, he started there at 3K, And I have done a presentation every single year for every one of our holidays in every class that he's ever been in. And so, you know, I think they're curious more than anything, and which I find I invite. I think that's fabulous that they want to know something that they don't know. And so it's really, really interesting to watch him interact with the other children and let them know the things that he believes in and that we do. And it's the same for him. I mean, to interact together and be tolerant, to use your word, it's been really neat to watch it. So.
I'm a healthcare provider in a small rural health clinic, and during Hanukkah, we closed down at sunset and lit the candles, and everybody that was there, whether they were staff or whether they were patients, took part in the little party and the candle lighting ceremony, and we do it first in Hebrew, and then we do it in English, and everybody participated and told a story and spun the dreidels, and that's how we ended the workshop.
I was talking to Eric and Matt at dinner about this a little bit. Would you say there's like sort of like some type of sentiment or support of Israel here in the South, or is there a difference apolitical?
That's a great question. It's a catalyzing question, because the question is there in the Jewish community sufficient support for Israel? And to some degree, in the more traditional part of the Jewish community, there always has been some. But generally in the South, Zionism was never strong. And in the reform movement in the South, until the declaration of the state, there was open hostility to Zionism. And then after the declaration of the state, I would just say there's just an abiding indifference. We had some Alex and Diane, another couple, went to Israel this last February. This is the first trip that I know of from the congregation, at least in my tenure. That was supposed to be a congregation-wide trip, but of course then something happened in the markets that made a lot of things impractical. But the question is really, is there support in the Jewish community in the South? And it just depends. In Atlanta, it's strong. In Miami, it's strong. In more reform or more less densely Jewish areas, it's there, but it's not a big factor. Taka among the Christian fundamentalists. I know many people who come to me, they'll call me on the phone, you know, if something happens in Israel, they're the first to call me, and we had somebody in our congregation who chose Judaism, but her brother worked for 3 years for Families United in Israel, helping the people who have been hit by the rockets coming from Gaza. And so you are, in terms of like rallies for Israel or lobbying for Israel, it is much more likely to come from the Christian Zionists. And they get over there much more often than we do.
I think within the Christian community, you'll see two different kinds of support for Israel. There's one kind of support that's more political and social, and I think, well, Israel's kind of outnumbered and surrounded, and it's good to support the underdog, sort of. But there's also, in the more fundamentalist flavors of Christianity, we can't have Armageddon and the Second Coming until after all the Jews are back in Israel and the temple's rebuilt and the sacrificial cult restored. And so there's splinter groups of Jews who are working in that direction, and so you get these extreme fundamentalist Christians who are very supportive and helpful with that endeavor. And so it's two very different flavors of support for Israel, one of which is maybe marginally the same.
Okay, we are at the third point in our agenda, and the Shoah perhaps is not a great way to end the Jewish program. This is, but in fact, because we remember